But tonight we continue in our devotional on anxiety. And for the past couple of weeks, we've been sharing about anxiety and what issues anxiety bring into our life and why we're anxious, really because of a lack of trust in God. We're anxious or fearful or worrisome because we don't fully and completely trust God in regards to whatever issue we might be facing. Last week we talked about the fear of death and looked at Psalm 23. And this week we're going to look at trusting God from Isaiah chapter 26. And so last week I promised you that I would share with you an awesome joke like I would share at Vacation Bible School. And so are you ready? Now, Dale Vance, I fully expect you to be doing Facebook Live or something right about now, just so we can share this awesome joke with other people. Okay, don't get your phone out. But here you go. You ready? What lies on the bottom of the ocean and twitches? A nervous wreck. Oh, come on now. I got to see Patsy liked it. That was good. What lies on the bottom of the ocean and twitches? A nervous wreck.
What's the strongest creature in the ocean?
Yeah, I'm going to hold on to that one because they may not have heard you. I'll hold on to that one. So what we see here is we're starting to talk about anxiety again tonight, and we're talking about really trusting God in a way that helps supply a need in our life when we are anxious. So let's look at Isaiah 26, verse 3, and I'm reading from the New King James Version tonight. It says, talking about God, it says, you will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. And so right here, this Bible verse, if you break it down in its three parts, does a really good job of explaining to us how to trust God and the result of that trust in God when it comes to those issues in life that would bring anxiety, that would bring worry, that would even bring fear into our lives. Because right there in the first part, it tells us the result of trusting in God. It says, you could put in there God instead of you. God will keep him or her in perfect peace. Right there it tells us that what God's going to do is that when we trust in him, when we don't allow the anxieties, the worries, the fears to overwhelm us, when we don't allow them to creep in and destroy our trust and our faith in him, what we see is that God will keep us in perfect peace. It goes on to tell us how why he's able to do that. It says that he does that in whose mind is stayed on you. And so when our mind is focused on God, when we are continually focusing our attention towards God through Bible study and through prayer and through a constant reliance on him in all that we face in life, when we focus on him, when our mind is stayed on him, when our mind is constantly on him, when our heart is constantly pointed towards him, then we have that perfect peace that we read about at the beginning of the verse. So when we do that, we see that. And why does he do that? Because, as it says there, because he or she, us, because we trust in God. And so when we trust him, when we fully and completely trust him, even in the most difficult times of our life, when we trust him, what he'll do is he'll bring peace to our heart and to our mind. A great example of this is last night when Bob and Jan and Sean and Donna Lell and myself were meeting with Chelsea and sharing with her the gospel and explaining to her the ins and outs of what it means to have a relationship with God. Through the midst of that, one of the things that we talked about was how even after we're saved, it doesn't mean that we're immune to difficult times in life. That even after we're saved, even after we have a relationship with Christ, Difficult times still come. We still mess up. We still sin. We do all, all of this still happens in life. But what we were trying to get her to see is that after we've trusted in God and we continue to trust in Him and we continue to keep our focus on Him, then when those difficult times come, God brings peace to our heart. And it was a great combination of, I did most of the speaking because obviously being the pastor, I don't know how to shut up. But while we were talking, all five of us were able to input into the conversation, some of us more than others, but we were all able to input into the conversation to help give a more fuller picture to Chelsea about about everything we were talking about. And I loved, and I would say it if they were both in here, but I loved the way that Sean and Donna shared about their own struggle through Donna's surgery, and how Sean said, I wasn't where I needed to be spiritually when she was having this surgery, and he said, but here she is completely at peace. Donna had this peace, and he said that showed me what I needed to do, and how it ministered to him, and how even though she was facing something that could very well take her life, Donna was still at peace. And why was that? Because she was trusting in God, and because she was trusting in Him, and her heart and her mind was staying on Him, as this verse says, God was bringing peace to her heart and to her mind. And so it was a great opportunity for us last night to witness to her about the goodness of God and how He brings peace to our lives. And that's what we see in this verse from Isaiah 26, is that's what, when we trust in God and we keep our mind on Him, then He's going to bring peace to our hearts. Does that mean that we're not going to face difficult times? No. Is there going to be times where we feel like the water is here and we are here? Yes. There's going to be times where we feel like we're drowning. Yes, there's going to feel like times where we are overwhelmed. But God, because we trust in Him, and because our hearts and our minds are stayed on Him, He will bring peace to our heart. He will bring the calm, even when we feel like we can't carry on. See, we can experience peace only as we trust God and keep our attention focused on Him. And because regardless of our circumstances, regardless of what we face, we can trust that God is not only able, but that He is also willing to replace that anxiety with peace. Too often when we don't trust God and we allow the anxieties and the worries and the fears of this life to overwhelm us, what's happening is we're not trusting God completely. And part of that is we whether we want to admit it or not, we're saying, God, I don't believe You're able, and God, I don't believe You're willing to help me. I don't believe You're willing, and I don't believe You're able to bring peace to my heart, to bring a calm to my mind. That's what we're basically telling Him when we are anxious, when we are worried, when we are fearful. But instead we see right here that God can and is able and will bring that peace to our hearts and minds. Philippians 4:7, a set of verses that we used at the first night on discussing this topic of anxiety. God will bring, it's a prayer that I use a lot of times when people have lost a loved one. And I share that with them. It tells us that God, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard our hearts and our minds in Christ. And that's what people need in times like that, in times of difficulty. We need God to guard our hearts and minds and to bring that peace that goes beyond all understanding, that transcends everything that we could ever imagine. And that's what He'll do. He'll take that anxiety away, and He'll replace it with His peace. He'll replace it with His comfort. And while we may have anxiety about how a situation may work out, God already knows the outcome. God's not surprised by it. God's not alarmed by it. God is not fearful about the situation that we're faced with. He's not sitting in heaven biting on His nails saying, oh no, I don't know how Nick's going to get through this. Even if Nick is sitting here on earth biting his nails saying, God, how am I going to get through this? Which I shouldn't be, because I should be trusting in Him. I should be allowing Him to bring that peace to my life. But see, regardless of the situation we face, God already knows the outcome. God already knows how He's going to work that situation. If we view it as bad, if we view it as a difficulty in life, God already knows how He's going to use that situation and that circumstance for our good. He already knows how He's going to do it. A couple weeks ago, or actually I guess it was last week, when I wrote my blog for the week, I talked about how God has brought us through certain situations and certain circumstances in our life so that we can minister to other people. That may be the good that God uses to bring good. That may be how God uses what we view as difficult circumstances to bring good through that situation. It's so that we can minister to someone else. You know, I'm able to minister to someone who has dealt with family members with Alzheimer's. I'm able to minister to somebody who's had cancer. And those are a couple of the circumstances that I'm able to more carefully minister to because of the situations I've experienced in my life. Your situations are unique to you, and you're able to minister and care for people and help people in those ways. And that may be how God is able to bring about in your situation, which may have looked difficult, may have been overwhelming. God's still able to use that to bring good in your life and even in others. But He will use that outcome for our good. That's what we have to understand, is that when He replaces that anxiety with peace, He's going to work out that situation because He knows how it's going to work out. And He's going to work it out in a way that's going to bring about good as He sees it. See, we need the best way for us to keep our mind focused on God. The best way that we are able to keep our mind stayed on Him, as Isaiah 26:3 says, is through daily Bible study and prayer. There's not much better way. And when I say prayer, I don't just mean, a set block of time in the morning or at lunchtime or of an evening when you sit down and you do a prayer time, where it's, you do a devotional, maybe read some scripture, and then do your prayer time. I'm not talking about just that. Those are good. You need to do that. But when we talk about a daily prayer time, that prayer time ought to extend throughout the whole day. When we get a text or an email or a phone call about the prayer chain, we ought to, even in the middle of whatever we're doing, drop everything, so to speak, mentally, so that we are able to pray for those people, whatever that situation may be. But that's one opportunity. As we're driving down the road and we think about those family members that need prayer, or those people in our church that need prayer, we ought to be, as we're reminded by the Holy Spirit of them, then we ought to spend time as we're riding down the road praying for them, or whatever we may be doing. We need to keep our attention focused on God through all of these situations, through prayer and through Bible study, through devotionals, things like that, but also through our friendships with other believers. Talking with Chelsea last night, one of the things that she really liked was the way that our church didn't force religion down her throat. That we built a relationship with her, and through that process, we were explaining to her, through months of getting to know her, getting to know the girls, and all of that through that process, we were building this relationship with her, and it made it easier for us to be able to share the gospel. And I was telling Misty about it last night. She said, well, think about it. That's what the disciples did. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what they did. Jesus sent them out and that's what Jesus modeled. And that's how we ought to do it, is to build those relationships. And one of the ways that we are able to keep our mind on Christ is by those friendships and those relationships that we have with other believers. If we surround ourselves all the time, and I'm saying even say we didn't go to church. If we didn't go to church and all we surrounded ourselves were with people who did not have a relationship with Christ, then naturally our mind is not going to stay on the things of God. But if our network of support around us is a church family that we fellowship with, that we worship with 2 or 3 times a week, maybe even get together throughout the course of the week, then at that point, then our focus is constantly going to revolve not necessarily just around the church or what the church is doing or the ministries of the church, but more importantly, the focus of the church. That's where our mind's going to naturally go, is the focus of the church, which is God. And so as we face difficult circumstances, we need to do things like pray specifically and even ask others to pray, that God would help us know what to do, and even to provide His peace in our life. That's really what we ought to do, is those relationships help with that. Having a church family, as we were sharing last night with Chelsea. It's important to have that church family that can support you and pray for you and do all the things that we see. And really, this is according to God's will. Asking for His prayers, or these prayers, is according to His will, and we can trust that He will answer us. It's not a matter of that we ask a prayer and, well, I hope this time God heard me. You know, He's got a whole lot of prayers to answer. I hope this time He heard mine. It's not a matter of that. We know that He hears our prayers. The Bible tells us. The Bible is very clear about that. And so we know that He hears us. But when we do, we need to pray according to His will and seek His peace and His comfort and His direction through all that we face, even those most difficult times in life. And this devotional tonight ends with a verse that has meant a lot to Misty and I over the years, simply because of the way the Lord has used it in our own lives. But this comes from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths." And that's important for us to understand, because when we do, when we trust in the Lord with all of our heart, with everything that we have, then He's naturally going to bring this peace that we've been talking about tonight. But when we do that and we don't lean on our own understanding, our own wisdom, our own knowledge, instead leaning on Him and trusting in Him, and when we acknowledge Him in all of our ways, in all that we do, when we make sure that He is the focus of that acknowledgement in our mind, that He is the one that our mind is staying on, like Isaiah said, then when He does that, when we do that, it says, He shall direct your paths. And so He's going to show us where we need to go. He's going to help us navigate those difficulties in life. And because of that, we are able to experience that peace. We're able to experience a closeness with Him because we are keeping our minds on Him.